I think it is safe to say that Ruckus viewers and Ruckus panelists have been paying close attention to the race for the U.S. Senate, where incumbent Claire McCaskill was challenged by Congressman Todd Akin. No need to repeat the inane comments Akin made about rape and abortion that assured his defeat. But I want to ask Steve Rose first, what will the Akin effect be on Missouri politics and on politics nationwide?
Well, I think that the lesson learned is to keep your big mouth shut if you don't know what you're talking about. The long-term impact, I think this is an isolated case of one man who said something that was really, really stupid, and it cost him the election. And everybody asked him to step aside. He refused to step aside. Anybody else could have beaten Claire McCaskill, and if he hadn't spoken, he would have beaten Claire McCaskill.
And he deserved to lose because
he deserved to lose, and because after he said what he said, he didn't apologize for it immediately. It took him 5 days, and he kind of half apologized. And Karl Rove himself and the President of the United States and everybody said this was irreparable damage, and he needed to just go. So I don't think that there's an overall overarching impact on the entire Republican Party over there.
Oh, I know.
But you got Murdoch in Indiana, and there were two marginal candidates in 2010 who had almost certain Republican seats that they lost.
Yeah.
4 Republican seats.
Thank you for making. I mean, that's a good point. There were, there were 8 or 9 or whatever the number is of men. I think they're all white men who made similarly stupid comments about rape / abortion / women's issues, and they were all defeated. Now, one of them also included Paul Ryan, who also made his stupid comment on it. So I agree that Akin was defeatable and should have been defeated, but I think that the overarching lesson is be careful what you're speaking about when you don't know what you're talking about.
I think it goes beyond just being careful what you say. I think the message that the Republican Party should get from this is that they have just consistently moved too far to the right, and the country is rejecting that. Those perspectives, those archaic approaches, that draconian Neanderthal.
Gwen, if he hadn't spoken, if he had just kept his mouth shut, he would have prevailed over Claire McCaskill. Do you agree with that or not?
Possibly. Claire is a shrewd and competent
well, but she was unpopular.
She was unpopular, but I think she still could have
How much did Romney win by in Missouri?
Akin.
Oh, substantial
13
amount,
points, 10 points. If Claire was not going to win this election, Claire has many good qualities. In this election, anybody, including Akin, had he kept his mouth shut, would have beaten her.
No, you're wrong on that. Because if you look at Missouri,
Easily.
what you look at is that in Missouri, Missouri voted overwhelmingly for Mitt Romney, but in the state, Democrats prevailed down that ticket throughout. So to say that Claire, with the exception of Susan Montee, everybody on that Democratic ticket won. So you can't say that.
In addition to that, Mike, Claire actually led the ticket. She received more votes than Governor
Nixon.
Nixon.
She pointed out, she won not only in urban areas, but in rural areas for the first time in her election campaigns. Let's take a look briefly at part of the speech she gave Tuesday night after winning election.
18 months ago, there was a lot of the political chattering classes that were spouting a lot of information about the Senate race in Missouri. And they all said, it's over. It's done. It's too red. It's just too red. There is no way that Claire McCaskill can survive. Well, you know what happened? You proved them wrong.
All right, I have a question for Yale. Has Jacob Turk announced yet that he's running for a 5th time against Emanuel Cleaver for Congress in 2014?
Well, seriously, let's hope not. Emanuel did far better than most people, including myself, expected in winning that race. I mean, Turk is not even a nominal candidate. He's really no candidate at all. He has nothing that he would say, hey, I could be your congressman, and here's why. So hopefully he's gone. I mean, I think right now we can say it's probably Cleaver's seat until he wants it, or until somebody runs against him in a primary like a Mike Sanders and says, I'm going to take it from you. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's Cleaver's seat to lose.
All right, let me go over some of these propositions in Missouri that we talked about last week and just wrap up what happened to them. Proposition A, St. Louis Police Department now in the control of St. Louis officials, Mary, and that bodes well for Kansas City.
It does. Yes, positive.
Absolutely.
Positive for us, for the whole state.
Prop B was the cigarette tax, an increase of what, 73 cents a
yeah.
package?
Yeah.
And Yale, you wrote that you were delighted that it failed. Oh, wait a minute.
No.
Maybe you didn't say that.
I did not, and I'm very sad it failed narrowly, 42,000 votes out of 2.7 million, and as I consistently maintain, the single person who killed that tax was Jay Nixon with his gutless stand of not going out for that tax and going around telling people, hey, this is good for schools, I'll make sure the money's spent right. He could have turned that election, he didn't. Is a big failure by the government.
May I note that Jay Nixon was reelected governor of Missouri. Peter Kinder, lieutenant governor. Chris Costa remains as attorney general, and Jason Kander out of Kansas City becomes the new secretary of state, and I gather has a bright political future in the
you know, he
Shawnee
represents
state.
the kind of a center district state line to, I think, maybe Trooster Paseo right through South Kansas City. And he has established and really quite amazing record in his first years in the legislature on ethics reform, campaign finance reform, and government transparency. So his opponent received $400,000 that we know of from Rex Sinquefield, and Rex Sinquefield really wanted to beat Jason Kander, and he just worked harder than his opponent.
Prop E was related to Obamacare, and it says you can't set up state insurance exchanges without approval of the electorate. And Steve Marakian, I believe it is fair to say that despite that, if the state doesn't establish an insurance exchange as part of Obamacare, the federal government will step in and do it.
Yeah, it was a symbolic protest vote, but it won't stop the exchanges.
And let me stay with you. Amendment number 3 was defeated. That would have changed the way that Missouri selects its appellate and Supreme Court judges.
Yeah, and I think we talked about that before. I'm glad it was defeated, though quite frankly, it wouldn't have bothered me either way, because I think there are consequences to elections. It doesn't bother me a great deal that a governor should have some say